Episode 16.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Finance Podcast, your training resource for being a happy, healthy, and wealthy dad.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have Justin Williams at legendarymarriage.com on the show. Legendarymarriage.com was started by him and his wife with the purpose to inspire, equip, and challenge couples. Today we're going to talk about how Justin got here, what's his start look like, what started legendarymarriage.com, some common pitfalls in marriage. We bring up the dreaded three-letter word, sex, which is even hard to say to a microphone somehow. Talk about that versus Netflix, really. You know, how we kind of get caught up in that. We're going to touch on money and Justin's definition of the heart of marriage. So as you can tell, it's a pretty meaty episode with a lot of good stuff. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Hey, Justin, are you with us?
Yeah, right here.
Absolutely. I love the ambiance you're bringing today with the cicadas and I guess the crickets in the background.
So. Oh yeah, yeah. I love the outside. So I was figured why not set up my office in the garage today?
Yeah. So I was reading a little bit about your story, and you know you've got legendarymarriage.com, which has coaching. It looks like a retreat, the community, and and I kind of wanted to catch up on how Justin Williams got to here, from maybe where his career started to how you got to becoming a coach. I also saw, I guess this is going to be part of the story, that you've moved 11 times in 15 years, and so that really has me like wondering what's wrong with you because
Me
that's
too.
brutal. I know that's tough.
I'm wondering what's wrong with us too. It's the numbers inflated ever so slightly, just from the standpoint of we moved and then put stuff in storage and then pulled it out and then moved again, and you know, it's been a roller coaster adventure over the last few years, and I wouldn't trade it, but because I try not to engage the idea of regrets.
Sure.
But there are certainly things that if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now, I'd probably make the same mistakes. Anyway.
So how did it all kind of start for you? It looks like you were in the ministry, is that right?
Yeah, so I graduated college and spent some time looking for work, and we played volleyball on Tuesday nights at our church in Toledo, Ohio, where my wife and I both grew up. And the associate pastor played with us, and one night he says, "Hey, you know, we're doing this whole thing, this quote-unquote contemporary worship thing, and we don't really know what it is. We don't know what we're doing. We think you would be a good guy to figure it out." And that was my quote-unquote calling to ministry. We think you can figure it out.
Yeah.
So I did, and I ended up working in 3 different churches over the course of about a little over 12 years, in a variety of roles. And come about 2009, I discovered coaching and started using that in some of the work I was doing in men's groups and with some married couples that I was working with doing some pastoral counseling. And I was just blown away by the results that we got, shifting from a mindset of pastoral counseling to a mindset of coaching and using different tools. Guys that had been stuck with the same issues for years, over the course of a couple months, started just shooting off like rockets. I mean, they were moving into leadership roles in the church and growing and serving people, and you know, their businesses were growing and their marriages were thriving. And I was like, okay, I'm sold. And so January 2012, I finally I had started coaching privately, and January 2012 I gave my notice and began my coaching practice. And I've been working alone. And from the beginning, my dream was really to be working with Danielle, with my wife. But I was doing a lot of men's work I lead a program called Braveheart Intensive, amongst other things. And it's great work. I love helping entrepreneurs and executives and artists and authors and leaders of all kinds level up.
And so that was 2009. I guess one quick question I'd like to interject. Maybe I'd love to know, like, what's the difference between, counseling and coaching? I feel like I have like a sense or like an instinct of what's different,
Sure.
But like, what is your thoughts on that?
The most elementary explanation is this. Counseling is about looking at the past to find healing and restoration so that you can live more fully present in the present. Mm-hmm. Coaching is about looking at the future and dreaming out what it is you want. What are you trying to accomplish? And creating a plan of action to get there.
Gotcha. So
they work hand in hand in a lot of ways, but the biggest difference is counseling looks at the past, mm-hmm. and coaching looks to the future.
When I hear that, I kind of hear that coaching would probably have more actionable steps that I could take. Is kind of how I feel. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that was my sidebar, I guess. You got us up to 2009. I saw in 2014, I think you had like a 5-month RV trip. Is that right?
Yeah. So 2013, the summer of 2013, we sold our house and decided we were going to go on an RV trip.
Wow.
We bought a motorhome and packed up, put all our stuff in storage, sold our house, bought the motorhome, and headed out. We drove about 27,000 miles over the course of almost 6 months, and really looking in a way, kind of asking God, what's next? Mm-hmm. And along the way, we were sitting at Kings Canyon State Park in California, watching the most incredible sunset you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And we were sitting on this picnic table. My daughter was asleep in the coach, and my wife and I were just talking. And we started talking about, like, what is it that we have that we can bring to the world, that we can share with people, that we can help people. And just for some reason, the idea of legendary marriage, not from we've got a legendary marriage and we want to tell you how to have it, but just we've worked really hard to find a way over, around, or through a lot of stuff. And with the coach background and just our experience and everything, we found this recipe. And so that night, Legendary Marriage was born.
I'm reading through your About page and your timeline, and you're very open. You and your wife are very open about kind of the challenges you had. And for me, I kind of like seeing that. It almost makes you more credible. Like, I don't think anyone wants to hear from someone who's never had any problems or says they've never had any problems, right? Because that doesn't feel
sure.
real. And so I'm sure you think your experiences have helped you a lot in your coaching path.
Yeah, it's life is a journey. Marriage is a journey. It's an adventure. I don't know if you've ever read any of Joseph Campbell's work, but basically he was a sociologist who studied stories, history and fiction. And what he came up with is that every story is the same story. Every hero goes on a journey. And they go through trials and challenges and supreme ordeals, and they come out the other side more of who they were made to be. And certainly we've had our fair share of those. And we're in the middle of some right now, and there'll be more to come. And I think one of the key things that we like to share with couples is, you get married, whether you can articulate it or not. You get married for one of many reasons. And one of the core reasons is because you don't want to be alone. Mm-hmm. You want a partner for the journey. And then we very quickly forget that it is a journey, and we start thinking of it like it's a destination. We made it to the altar, we had the honeymoon, now we just settle in, and, marriage becomes part of our life. I work on my marriage, or I work on my car, or I go to work, or we forget that it is a journey. And so when the trials and challenges come, they knock us down. Yeah. And that's a big part of our stories. We got knocked down at one point and almost threw it all away.
In your analogy of kind of destination versus journey, if you think you've already arrived in that destination, you kind of think the work's over with and the work's done. So like you said, maybe when stuff hits you, you're not ready to put in more work because, hey, you already did what you were supposed to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think we tend to start thinking about a marriage in terms of, like a car, right? Like, oh, you change the oil, rotate the tires, and, drive it into the ground, right? So make sure it's got gas in it. But a marriage isn't a car. Or we start to think of it in terms of a business, and we treat it like a business. We divide the chores, we divide the responsibilities, we pay the bills, we manage the budget, we set goals and objectives for how many kids we want to have and when we're going to buy this house and savings and retirement and all these things. But the fact of the matter is, marriage isn't a business either. Mm-hmm. It is a journey. Yeah. And so when we keep our eyes on that, we start to remember that it requires consistent investment. One step at a time, the next step, and then the next, and then the next, and so on. So it's not a part of life. Marriage isn't a part of life. It is where all of life happens when you're married.
So along this journey, in all your experience with your coaching, what are some common, themes in the pitfalls that kind of trip us up and start causing problems in marriage? What are some of those themes? And I'd like to kind of maybe talk about unpack each one of those just a little bit.
Yeah. I like I said, there's the way we think of marriage, one, as something that's just one part of our life rather than where everything is. It's like the bucket that our entire life is in. That's one thing. Another is really understanding the nature of it. Is marriage is this beautiful, painful, messy, refining fire in a lot of ways. When you invite someone into the deepest places of your life and your heart, it means you're going to call each other forth to grow, to be becoming more of who you're meant to be. And I think the mistake is people think that they're done. They just settle and start being essentially resigned to, this is as good as it gets. At least there's not abuse. At least it's this. It's better than the marriage that my parents had, or things like that.
Yeah, one thing I saw on your website was settling. It's kind of describing a late night scene. Getting in bed and just settling to scroll social media or Netflix.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
What about sex? How does that become a chore versus kind of a privilege and this great fun thing to do, right?
Sure. I think like anything, honestly, we just get lazy. Yeah. Especially I'll speak especially to men. We get lazy, frankly. We pour our energy into pursuing this woman. You say, oh my gosh, she's the one I want her. And you go out and you pursue her and you court her and you propose, and then you say, I'm gonna love, honor, and cherish. I will take a bullet for you. And then we get past the finish line, the altar, and then we're on to the next thing we're trying to conquer. And it's part of the masculine journey in and of itself that we're warriors in a way. Like we're looking for a battle to fight. The trouble is we take our eyes off the battle. As husbands, the battle is to be investing consistently in our marriage, to be moving the relationship to a deeper, stronger, more intimate, more powerful place, we get lazy. And so we get entitled. We start thinking, well, I work hard, so, I work hard to get paid, so I should get laid.
Yeah.
I've literally sat with guys and that's the expression that comes out. It's like when we talk about sex, I'm entitled to it. No. And frankly, you're not going to get ill if you don't have sex. It's not like water or food. It's not a necessity.
Yeah.
It is a necessity in terms of a hallmark of a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
But it also requires both a man and a woman to be coming towards each other, because men connect through physical intimacy, and it leads them to a place of emotional intimacy. Like when you've had some real great intimacy, physical intimacy with your wife, you feel connected. You start talking about stuff, like life seems to flow. Mm-hmm. And it's why we prioritize sex. On the other hand, women tend to enter into intimacy through emotional intimacy. They want to talk and feel connected in order to be physically intimate. And so it requires both of us moving towards each other rather than just kind of staying in our lanes, dividing all the chores, dividing all the tasks and everything, and flip on Netflix and, hey, you want to fool around? Well,
makes me think of level playing field. Meet them at their playing field, and maybe they'll meet you at your playing field every once in a while.
Yeah. I would say that is, I hesitantly use the word responsibility. That is part of the job of being a spouse, is to be calling each other forth. So when my wife is playing small in some way, she's playing a victim, playing the martyr, playing a role, participating in her own story in some way. My job is to say, hey, babe, you've got more than that. Like that's not what's most true of you, and vice versa. It's her job too. So I think when we forget that, we start to the graph of marriage. In sales, we always want to see the graph going up and to the right.
Yeah. And
what happens with most marriages is it kind of starts going down and to the right. There's some kind of a crisis, betrayal, disappointment, something. And it takes us down. And then we work to try to recover, but we don't get it back to the level it was before. And that pattern just keeps repeating, and it goes, and we keep settling.
Moving on to money, what kind of role do you see money playing in marriage? Is it only the really tight, I guess, budgeted folks, that are maybe on the not well off that have money issues, or do you see it in wealthy couples as well?
Well, it's been said 1,000 different ways, from the Bible to The Secret to everything in the world about money mindsets and Napoleon Hill and everything. Money is reflective of your priorities. And so, of course, it's the number one thing that people cite when they say, what do they fight about? Couples. What are couples fighting about? What's the number one cause of divorce and dissolution of marriages? It's money fights, because money represents our priorities. And where we don't get in alignment about our priorities, it causes friction. And I want to be really careful to say, alignment doesn't mean I'm convincing her, I'm getting her on my side, I'm getting her on board with I'm going to decide how we do things. Alignment says, what is the vision of the future that we want to have? Then how are we going to agree together to get there? And that alignment or lack of it, that's the key indicator. Money's just a reflection of it. And I see it in couples who are making 7 figures, and I see it in couples who are making 3 figures.
I like your point about kind of goal setting and focus and get on the same page about your target, and then that kind of lets both of you know maybe what your situation should be like in the short term.
Yeah. And underneath it all, it's really about communication. It's about learning how to express yourself, to ask for what you need or what you want, and listen to your spouse. Because when we do that, when we get really curious, instead of allowing bitterness and resentment and criticism and contempt and stonewalling and defensiveness, when we stop trying to be two different people cohabitating, co-laboring, and co-parenting, and we start working towards the idea of alignment, the Bible will call it oneness. It's this notion of we want to be of one mind, one heart, one mind. When we work towards that, something expands for each person. It's not a sacrifice of individuality or identity. It actually causes a really remarkable expansion for each person. But we have to let go of the separateness. We
spent the last 10, 15 minutes kind of dissecting, maybe some pitfalls and issues and whatever. And I'd like to kind of twist it a little bit and talk about maybe preventative maintenance for the car we talked about, right? That we're trying not to run into the ground.
Yeah.
What are some good kind of quick tips, or what should we be doing to make sure we kind of headed off at the pass before we get kind of into trouble?
Yeah. So we have what we call the heart of marriage, and there's 4 pieces to it. And the first one is just companionship. And the simple tip there is do stuff together. We laugh, but you'd be surprised how many couples live completely separate lives. They eat the same food, they sleep in the same bed, but everything else is completely divergent. Recreation activities, hobbies, things like that are great places where we can come together. And it's as simple as take a walk around the block and check in with each other. Just say, hey, what's important to you right now? What are you dreaming about? What are you struggling with? Whatever. But do stuff together, companionship. That's number 1. Number 2 is communication. And like I said, it's ask for what you need. You don't expect your spouse to be a mind reader. Those moments when you're in sync and you finish each other's sentences happen because you are communicating clearly and you begin to identify the patterns in each other. But that only happens when you communicate and you ask for what you need, you listen to each other, and you get really curious. So companionship and communication. The third is commitment. And I'm not talking about I'm committed to gut it out.
Right.
Like we've confused, frankly, we've confused commitment with obligation.
Yeah.
Right? The commitment we have in a marriage is on that wedding day. When you made that commitment, it was out of eagerness and excitement for that journey that you didn't have any idea what you were getting into, but you knew you wanted to get into it together. It's that commitment to say, shoulder to shoulder, back to back, we will find a way over, around, or through whatever comes. We will together. And it's really, commitment is really recognizing and remembering that you are stronger together. It's simple math. You're stronger together. Mm-hmm. And the last piece is community. And this is where it's really surprising in a way. Most of the time when I've worked with couples, pastoral counseling or coaching, where they've hit real trouble spots, inevitably the couples have isolated themselves from the guy has isolated from his friends, the woman has isolated from hers, and their couple friends, like the tribe, those people that you really do life with, that have permission to just walk in your door and open your fridge, they've isolated. Community is so essential to a healthy marriage. And I'm not talking about community like, hey, we all had hot dogs at the 4th of July barbecue. I'm talking about community where, yes, you come together for something, some event or some cause, whether it's, running a 5K for cancer or a 4th of July barbecue. But community has a cause, a purpose to it, and it's powerful when we show up and we're authentic and vulnerable. Have you ever been in the room when somebody, the conversations just kind of surface, like, hey, the weather and sports and car issues and, things like that. Oh, did you get that new guy to mow your lawn and blah, blah. And somehow the conversation turns to something more significant. Somebody says, I'm really struggling with this thing. And all of a sudden the temperature of the room shifts. And then somebody else shares something that's actually important to them. Mm-hmm. And then you start to see that you're not alone as a person or as a couple. Community is so important because we rise or we fall to the level of the people around us.
Wow.
So, it's companionship, communication, commitment, and community. These are the 4 elements of the heart of marriage. And easy ways to really tap into them. Companionship. Simply do stuff together. Cook a meal together. Clean the house together. Do things together. Recreation. Go for a bike ride or a walk. Go get ice cream at the neighborhood ice cream place. Go on a fancy vacation. It doesn't have to be expensive. Date nights don't have to be a lot of money or a lot of time. It can be 10 or 15 minutes. Do stuff together. Ask for what you need. Remember that you are stronger together. That's what the ring on your finger is supposed to remind you of. And then surround yourself with other men and other women and other couples who operate at a level that you respect and you trust and you admire.
So one thing, when you talked about community, I could kind of see, how you talked about when a guy's in trouble, I can kind of see guys doing this. We, instead of reaching out for help in community, we do the opposite and isolate ourselves. Mm-hmm. And one thing, I've seen you covered this on your podcast, but we expect women to kind of read our minds and know what we want, when I feel like and I'm guilty of this, where we're not even sure what we really want, or what I feel like we don't even know ourselves sometimes, or what we're actually trying to get at.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, just between us, men are wildly insecure beings.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Right?
Yeah.
We are.
Absolutely.
It's like, in a way, it's like we pour out everything we have in the pursuit of our wives. Yeah. And then once we close the deal, so to speak, we're like, oh my gosh, that was terrifying. If she had rejected me, I don't know what I would have done. And so they play small. We play small from there a lot of times. We get lazy, we play small, and what we've got to remember is that we are made to be. My friend Ryan Mickler runs a group called Order of Man, and Ryan has brilliantly boiled it down to, as men, we're called to provide, protect, and preside. And it simply means,
I like that.
We're made to work. Like, men need work.
Mm-hmm.
We're made to provide for our families, and that's good. Not just money, not just a home and stuff, but to provide emotional, physical, and spiritually. We're made to protect, like we are protectors, and we're made to lead, to preside over. And I think man, I wish I could find a way to say it better than Ryan does.
But he beat you to it, right?
But yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I've been on his website and stuff. I'm not sure. I'll have to check it out and confirm that. But I'm pretty sure I've already found him organically somehow in the past.
Yeah. He's a great guy. Running a great cause there, helping guys level up in their lives.
Let's go ahead and finally talk about legendarymarriage.com. So
sure.
I think you've got 4 things there. Can you tell me what all you've got on your website, kind of what services you have?
Sure. So, like we said, the heart of marriage is companionship, communication, commitment, and community. So everything we do is designed to help couples nurture the heart of their marriage. So we have a podcast where every week we're interviewing experts and about different areas of life, because marriage is the container for your life. And then, so we interview experts about everything from sex and romance to organization to finances and everything else. And then we also invite regular couples to come and share some of their stories, because we want that sense of community of you're not in it alone. So we have a podcast that inspires, equips, and challenges couples. We have a free Facebook community where men and women can come and just celebrate and talk about what's going on, good, bad, and ugly in their lives and in their marriages. And then we have a retreat that we do called Intensive, and we've got that coming up in October. But everything we do points toward Legendary Marriage Academy. And that's a monthly program of coaching, courses, and community, where we have weekly video coaching calls and some e-courses for people that are teaching them skills and tools, and then a community, again, that comes around to support and call forth and encourage one another. And we do it that way because community is so powerful. When you're sitting on one of those calls and you're listening to Kevin and Karen talk about something that they're doing, you start to see something in your relationship. And so you and your wife start to go, oh, wow, yeah, we could use that. That's a great idea. So it's about much more than Danielle and I going, well, have you tried this? So it's the power multiplies in that kind of a group setting. So everything comes back to LMA for us.
And one thing I noticed in your group is that some of the couples were just brand new married couples. So,
sure.
I mean, is it fair to say that, my marriage doesn't need to be on life support for me to come to you guys?
No. In fact, if you're on life support, man, I'd love to talk to you because I either want to help you find a way forward or connect you with a counselor who can help you find a way to get some healing and restoration. Mm-hmm. But our stuff is really geared towards couples they're doing okay. Like they have those moments where they're like, ooh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Or, man, we're not good. And I want us to be. Yeah. We're a community of couples who refuse to settle for an ordinary marriage. And the reason we say that is because ordinary is average. And the average for marriage is not so good.
Right.
Yeah, it's about a 50% divorce rate on first marriages.
Well, that's great, Justin. So really, man, I'm just so glad you were here. And you're the first, actually, this will be the first podcast specifically addressing marriage. We've talked about a lot of things, related, but so I'm really glad you're here. What's the best way, if we just want to shoot you a message or find you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Super easy. You can find us at legendarymarriage.com. You can drop us an email at Danielle and Justin at legendarymarriage.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook. I'm Justin D. Williams.
Well, awesome, Justin. Well, thanks so much, and
thank you, Seth.
I'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Love what you're up to.
All right, guys, that is a wrap with Justin. Looking back at the list of things we talked about with Justin, it was a real meaty episode for sure. I almost feel bad for him because, the questions, that I asked were all pretty intense, pretty heavy, and probably you could unpack each one of those questions and speak on that alone for 30 minutes. But Justin did an awesome job. You can tell he's been around this stuff for a long time because he had a lot of great answers, and you could just feel some of that experience and some of that stuff he's picked up along with his coaching and everything. So if you're just newly married, or you just feel like you want a little boost in your marriage or a little tweak, then you should definitely check out legendarymarriage.com. He also has a podcast that him and his wife do together that I've listened to, and it's a lot of fun. And so, that could also be maybe your starter step into getting to know Justin and getting into his community. As always, I'm at fatherhoodfitnessfinance.com. Give me a shout anytime. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Fatherhood Fitness Finance Podcast. You can find us at fatherhoodfitnessfinance.com.